Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our AMA session. I'm Fade Deni, your host for today. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to explore the fascinating world of technology with you all. Joining us is Temitope Omolere. She's the head of quality assurance at InterSwitch, and she's here to share from her wealth of knowledge and experience in ensuring product excellence in the digital space of technology. So, Temitope, it's great to have you here with us. Are you ready for an engaging session?
Definitely. Good evening, Fadi. Thanks for having me on the platform.
Great. Okay, so I just wanted to say to everyone, this is a Q&A session. So please drop your comments in the chat box for Temitope, and she will be answering them as we go along. So, Temitope, to begin with, could you provide us a glimpse of your day-to-day activities and what your role entails at InterSwitch?
So I currently lead the quality assurance service in one of the business units of InterSwitch. And I also happen to probably be the longest tenured QA person in the organization. Part of what that means really is that half the time I'm not just playing my role as a QA lead in my unit, I'm also playing the role of governance, QA governance across the organization. And what that typically looks like is probably there are times when we need to make decisions as to how process should go or what process we need to modify, adjust, or strategy around how we want engineering products to go like. And so in those situations, then I probably need to be brainstorming. Sometimes I ask informal questions from my team members and colleagues across the organization to get an idea of where their minds are at, so that whatever solution or process we're putting forward will be something that actually works and that fits the needs and results, and also so that it's not something that's going to be very difficult or tedious for team members to do. But on a day-to-day basis, my job would typically entail doing a lot of strategy and defining strategy and execution of QA activities. Because these days I'm not actively the guy, I'm not the the boots on ground, but I do the work of coordinating and help my team members and colleagues to achieve those quality goals we have as far as our engineering products entails. So it also involves sometimes identifying and choosing tools that would work in order to help us accelerate our engineering process in terms of the quality side of things. It also would sometimes involve, having sessions with my team members and my peers in the organization across functions, so that we can bring to bear their challenges or concerns that they have into how we translate it into the engineering products we're building. I also always have to provide mentoring. I mean, it goes without saying that I have to provide mentoring and coaching, functions for my colleagues as well, because there are times when a team member would obviously hit a snag and they need help as to how to get past that. And so a typical day would be, oh, do you have a minute? Can I talk to you now? And I have learned that when people feel like we care about them, they will be more comfortable going the extra mile for you. So what that means is I've learned to prioritize those interruptions. So somebody comes and says, do you have a minute? Can I talk to you? To put everything aside and say yes, and turn towards them and say, okay, for a minute here, I can spare whatever, I can spend the next 10, 20 minutes to talk to you so that we can get to the bottom of this thing that obviously is bothering you and gets you to the solution. I've also learned that I don't need to always be the one to solve the problem. Sometimes just asking the right questions, helps them reach the right conclusion and solve the problem themselves. But people need someone who has a measure of clarity and a different perspective to help them get through. So that involves a lot of coaching and mentoring. So yes, talking a lot, even though my natural preference, as you know, is to just mind my business and sit in one corner. But I've learned to embrace, that talking and engaging my team members and seeing my colleagues across, the different functions to see how it works. The other thing is I usually would have to collaborate a lot with engineering leads, because today the unit, my business line in particular, has an engineering lead. So there are two engineering managers. There is me and there is the person who is heading the software development group as lead itself. And we need to collaborate closely a lot, because there would always be daily issues. There's a problem here, there's a system here, or there's this thing we're building that needs, we need to think about how to go around it. And so we're constantly having that back and forth where we're discussing and trying to find how to go past whatever current issue we're dealing with for time. So it's always a mix of lots of talking, lots of brainstorming. I joke that I've grown gray, now that with this role, but at the same time, I think I've come to enjoy the fact that it allows me to see the business in a different perspective. So not just as a core engineering person, but as somebody who I see the impact of what I'm doing. I see how it translates to the bottom line and to the revenue, how it fits into the revenue line of the organization. And for me, I think that is a joy. And then I also love the fact that I get to actually help shape the career, so to speak, of some of my colleagues. When I say shape, I think from the perspective that I get to live out the values that I think has helped me grow and help them see how it works and plays out in real life. And so it's me being willing to share vulnerably my experiences, my challenges, my frustrations, and still tell them that even in all of this, we still keep going. So it's a lot of encouraging, coaching, brainstorming, strategy definition, and sometimes just solving the day-to-day BAU issues that come up. But sometimes it's just environmental issues, something is down and the server is not working. And I need to go and help them speak to somebody that would do what needs to be done to get it sorted. So those kind of things. And yeah, so I think that's basically a quick summary of what my general day-to-day looks like.
Thank you. So go on. Okay, thank you. So a few things I just wanted to point out from you answering was that you do a bit of around governance, and in the past I'm quite aware that we didn't really have much governance back then when I was, for example, when I was in InterSwitch, So it seems now that a lot of things are now coming into place, and then of course your leadership skills also includes having people management. Because and I'm part of the people that actually struggle a lot with people management. So it's kind of I kind of relate with when you said, oh, you have to push a few things aside just to understand, just to get to talk to them, so that they can be a bit more active, in their day-to-day activities. So I kind of like that as well. So another question for you is: are you able to share, insights around the most challenging projects that you've worked on? And I know there's quite a number, but it'd be nice for you to tell us the one particular challenging project and how you navigated those challenges, when they came by.
Okay, so I think one that comes to mind, which right now it looks, because it's now in the rear view, I'm like, okay, what's so serious? But I think at the time it was a product that involved a lot of, it was a data prep product. I will choose not to mention the name because I work for a company and there's NDA, but it involved data prep, which is and it's a solution that helps to prepare the data that goes on the payment cards. So the ATM cards we use, and that system, I met it since it was in the team I joined, and I needed to test now. It was already built, it was already existing, and they were making some changes and I needed to test it. And to give context, this particular product involves a lot of cryptography. Yes, I studied computer science in school, and yes, I understand mathematics, and at some point in my life, I will tell you mathematics was my favorite subject, but I wasn't ready for this level of, detail and this level of mathematical applications. And honestly, cryptography to an extent still seems like, something that just floats right above my head. So I was like, this thing is way too complicated. There is nothing straightforward about this thing. It's easy for me to look at a code that is maybe a web-based application. I can understand what you're doing and I can easily make sense of it, even if I wasn't part of the design session. But for this one, you required understanding payments industry specifications, and then understanding the mathematical formulas, the cryptographic formulas, and a lot of very niche areas that I needed to understand in order to make sense of some of the things I needed to test. Now, what was a bit more complicated was because some of the people on the team at the time were more focused on, we've done the work, don't try to understand what this is, I just test it and move. And I was like, I can't function that way. The way my mind works, I need to understand the inner workings of this thing to first, so that it then makes sense to me. There's a mental map that I can then use to navigate and know where to check for problems and all of that. And it took me a while to realize that truly you don't always have to have a full domain knowledge. Just a surface and good understanding of how what should work helps in going a long way. So so to give context anyway, my personality is this kind of person who loves inputs. Input in the sense that I read a lot, I'm curious about a lot of things, I'm asking questions. If I'm asking you questions, I'm asking the internet questions. So the fact that this is an area that I could not go to the internet to ask questions because it was very niche and very few people understood, it meant that I needed to then take time to understand while still waiting, realizing that there's a timeline on this project and we need to finish in time and deploy to product so that the customer who is waiting for the solution can use it. But I learned from that process that I can find the balance between needing to understand in fine detail everything and a domain versus just bringing in exploratory testing, for instance. So just to play around with this thing and see how it goes. And, also bringing balance of the risk involved. Because to give context again, why I was curious and wanting to really understand, the risk involved in this solution was such that if we ended up going to production with this thing and there was a problem, the customers would have prepared batches of cards as many as 5,000 cards. If there's a problem in how those card data was prepared, all those 5,000 cards were useless. And to again bring another financial context to it, that's to say, like, the card cost 1,000 naira, that's 5 million naira. At the time, I don't think my per annum was up to 5 million. So I really was like, you're not just going to tell me to go ahead and do this thing. When I understand the risk attendance, if I do not, if I'm not quite confident, in some of the solutions and how it's working. So it was that kind of push, the frustration of, I don't understand this thing, but can I safely say, let's go to production and be sure that this thing was going to be fine? Because fortunately, I found the balance between feeling good and comfortable with what we had and being sure that what we eventually produced was fine. And so it was just a space where I learned that sometimes you won't have full clarity, but you need to move with faith. And at the same time, a measure of trust that your team members are also doing the right thing. And, I navigated that season and I got past it. So I think that's one of the words that I would not forget, because till tomorrow, I cannot fully tell you that I understand cryptography to the detailed level I would like to. But it helped me understand that sometimes the measure of ambiguity is fine. But just knowing that these are the key areas, so being able to then bring in risk management in my tests, to then realize at this point, this is a point where I'm not going to trade anything for you. You have to prove to me that it works. And this is a point that I can trade off, because I know that to a large extent there's safety here. So I think that's the one that always comes to mind.
Yeah, thank you for that, Temitope. And one thing I just wanted to pinpoint from that conversation, or from you answering that question, was the fact that we now have you assess the situation. So basically, you did a risk assessment, and you understood what the risk was, and then you went ahead to fully not fully understand what you were meant to actually develop, but you understood what the risk was. So that took you aback to ensure that what you were delivering, the quality assurance service you were providing to that particular project was top notch, to ensure that the company doesn't lose that amount of revenue or that amount of money. So in essence, basically what you're saying is that when you have challenges like that, ensure that you do risk assessments, and then you are able to make a better decision with that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So third question, no questions has come in yet, but I have got more questions for you. With the fast pace of technology advancements, how do you ensure that you and your team remain up to date with keyword trends and technologies?
So remember I said I'm a very curious person and I'm always asking questions. If I'm not asking the human being, I'm asking the internet. There's a joke that I used to hear when I was younger, which was that they used to say it in Yoruba, my native language, right? But I'll try to loosely translate, because as someone who knows the answer, but I will still ask you questions. I'm that person who my curiosity means that I have an idea what I think this thing might be. But if I think you know better or you know different, I'll come and ask you, so this thing, what do you think? What are your thoughts around it? What's going on with you? What are you thinking about? And that has translated to how I have learned over the years in my life. So it means that at any given point, check my phone, my laptop, my work laptop, my office laptop, I will typically have 2 or 3 different browsers, not browser window, browser. So I have Chrome, I have Mozilla, I have Edge, and there are, in all of those browser windows, there are like several tabs open. I'm sure cumulatively across them, it's easily over 100 tabs, because I'm constantly finding something, reading something, catching up with something, bookmarking something, and saying, I need to come back and read this thing again later. I am a very curious person. So how I keep up then is that I'm constantly reading articles. Caveats, I would not read a textbook. So if you give me a textbook and you ask me to read it, I have never in my life done it, and I don't think I'm ever going to achieve that. When people say, oh, I read this textbook all the way from cover to cover, I'm like, not me, miss me. But constantly I'm reading up on articles, I'm subscribed to a number of newsletters. So that helps me become aware quickly when something is going on. And then in most cases, sometimes I might just have a rabbit hole experience where this particular subject right now catches my attention and I'm locked in on it. And so I'm digging and digging and digging. And then I go all the way to the bottom of it. And when I'm satisfied, okay, I think I have a good grasp of this. Then I come out of that hole and I focus on something different. And so it has helped me to be able to say a little about a lot of things at the very minimum. So I always look like there's a conversation about almost anything going on, as random as it may be. There's a good chance that I might have a fair understanding, because I read broad, I read wide, and it just helps me stay current. So even though, for instance, I do not actively test today, There are a lot of things that when my team members are talking to me and they're like, oh, this, and I'm like, oh, have you tried this? Have you considered this solution? Go and read up on it and check it out. It's always like, how do you know that? Because somehow I'm reading something, or I might have even read something just the previous day that is related to that, right? And so that helps me stay relevant. I'm constantly reading, constantly paying attention to what's going on. Sometimes it's even just LinkedIn articles that I'm reading. On a day when I happen to have a few minutes of my life, I'm scrolling through and I'm stumbling, oh, this looks interesting. And I just dig through into it. So yes, I read a lot. And I also use, at some point I used to do a lot of podcasts, but lately there are too many and some of them are just not necessary. I just don't have the patience and time. So instead I keep links. There's an app called Blink that summarizes a lot of books. So depending on what it is that I'm looking for, I just listen to 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I get the full gist of what I need and I move on from that. So yes.
Okay. So I kind of like what you said about, not reading textbooks. I find textbooks archaic, old. It doesn't have it doesn't have, new articles, new technologies. It's whatever that was available at that time. That's what was produced and given to students, to whoever is going to read them. For example, you go online. I'm someone like that as well. I'm constantly on LinkedIn. I feel these days I actually breathe on LinkedIn. Like my phone, I'm always on LinkedIn, leaving comments, reading about new articles. And I think that's the best way to get trends. And if you want to really stay focused, or if you want to really stay ahead, well, not technically ahead, but if you want to be aware of the new things happening in the tech space, I think LinkedIn is somewhere where you can get that. And then, articles as well, Googling, asking Bing chat, for example, or what's the new trends and things like that. So yes, of course. Audience, we don't have any questions yet from you guys. Please drop your questions if you've got any. I've got additional questions for you, Temitope. So what are the necessary skills for somebody? Imagine somebody just coming out from uni. When I started my career as a software tester, as a QA assurance, quality assurance analyst, I was fresh out of uni, did NYSC, and I was basically a novice. So imagine me right now that I was still at that stage and I don't have much experience. So what skills do you think would be needed to have a successful career in quality assurance?
So I think one of the skills that anybody needs in almost any field, but especially in quality assurance, is curiosity. You need to be curious about the world around you and by extension about the solution that you're going to be testing. So that curiosity means that you're willing to experiment. And experimenting, we call that exploratory testing, really. Just log onto the system and just play around, see how it behaves. Forget what they say they should or should not do. Just, scroll through the application, navigate around it, and just see how it behaves. You will stumble on something. And then that will help you begin to understand differently and ask engaging questions to your team members. Because based on what you stumble on, you'll probably be able to ask much more informed and much more engaging questions. And questions that shows that you're not asking from a place of superiority, from a place of honest curiosity, because you've tried your hands at it and you are engaging on the level of somebody who is familiar with that system as well. The other thing I think anybody starting a software testing career should have is grit. You need to be willing to push it through, because there will be days when you'll be frustrated. There will be days when things will just not go the way it should go. I mean, how do you cope with the fact that, and for context, right, Friday, when we started, deploying and deploying applications was even much more tedious. It meant that they'll give you a full build that was ready. They finished writing everything. Now you're supposed to go and sit down with it and test it, and then they'll be telling you how far. You need grit. You need a measure of grit and staying power to say, yes, this thing is tedious. Yes, I'm under a lot of pressure. There's time constraints. There is maybe sometimes management is even breathing down your neck and asking you, we need this.
What's the update?
And you're not there yet. So if you don't have grit, you will break and you crack under this kind of pressure, because somehow it will become too much. And then the other thing I always encourage people to have is have a staying power to say, see, I agree that this thing is going to take a while, and I accept the fact, and then give yourself grace. It's a mix of staying power and giving yourself grace to say, see, because there are days when you would honestly and genuinely mess up because you do not know what you're doing. You're new at this thing. You do not have any prior experience. You do not know better. And so there's no reference points really. even if you have colleagues who are willing to help you, they have their own deliverables as well. So they may not always be as available the way you would like. So you need to have staying power to say that it's not me, it's not like I'm an idiot. It's not like I'm totally ignorant. It's just that this person is going through theirs. And so I need to also have staying power, because otherwise imposter syndrome will eat you up.
Absolutely.
You would start feeling like, am I sure they are not just fixing me while they are keeping me on this job? Am I sure I'm not a complete loser and somebody just likes my face is why I'm still in this organization?
I'm still on the job.
Papers, So you need to have a measure of grades. And in terms of then the functional skills you have need as a software tester, you need to be somebody who is willing to go the extra mile. You need to have a measure of technical savviness. What that looks like is that you're willing to learn a little bit. You don't have to learn everything, but have a good understanding of SQL, for instance, if you're using relational databases, because that will give you a quick understanding of the structure powering the data you're feeding through your system. And when you understand that, it gives you a mental map also of how the interaction should be. You need to then also have an understanding of it. I always tell people that you need data structures. And data structures is basically understanding the different fields that are used to capture data on your. So there are things around strings, which is just text that you enter. There are things around floating numbers, which we're familiar with. That's just decimal numbers, basically. But floats then allows you to define how long it can be, how many decimal points can go after it. Because if you're dealing with a mathematical system that's calculating how to get steps into space, for instance, you don't want to make mathematical errors because of approximation.
And then it crashes.
On the flip side, if you're dealing with finance, you don't want to have decimal points that goes to infinity, because then your accounts would never balance.
Definitely.
So your understanding of all of those data structures helps you properly dimension those things. So get a basic understanding of data structure, understand the SQL, and then get a small understanding as well of algorithms. It will sound very technical, but it will put you heads and shoulders quickly ahead of the pack of anybody who just went to a school and they show them how to test, because you will then understand what is powering the systems you're testing. And it helps you engage your colleagues who are writing the code better. They will give you much more attention, and they'll give you much more premium. You'll be placed more above those who are just basically asking them, so how does this system behave? And they narrate to them. And then they're not asking them any real intelligent questions because they don't really want to understand the inner workings. So that gives you a bit of not a bit actually, a good leg above anybody and everybody else who are joining at the same level you're joining. The other thing is you need to really speak this skill, because there are some things that your team members would not want to do. For instance, nobody likes to do documentation. However, if at that level you're willing to do the documentation, it gives you better understanding of the systems you're working with, because you're the one who is actually writing the narrative as to how this thing works. So at that level, you're able to then understand better, interact with those things better, and then it gives you, so that way you will understand and have a better grasp of those things. The other skill I think a quality assurance person would need is good communication skills.
Absolutely.
You need to be able to express yourself in the way that your audience understands it, and you need to also tailor it to the right person. So, for instance, if I'm talking to somebody in C-suite, the way I would engage and pass my message is not the same way I would engage and pass my message to my peer. And it's not the same way I pass the message when I'm doing a demo with customers. So I need to understand my audience and my stakeholders at time and be able to communicate appropriately so that they take me seriously. Because if I go into a C-suite conversation and I'm telling them how that is going to take us under 3 weeks on a project that I know they wanted to go live last month, I need to explain why it will take 3 weeks. I cannot just go there and tell them, oh, it's not ready, it's going to take us another 3 weeks. I need to be able to communicate adequately the story that makes it necessary, so that when I then say it's going to take us 3 weeks, they understand that it's a no-brainer. Because they don't have time to waste. They wanted to start making money off that product last month. So I cannot afford to just come and be like, because we encountered some problems and so we can't go. So communicating right is very critical to that as well. And then stakeholder management. Your developers and you may or may not fight, but I guarantee you have different opinions. So how do you then communicate that difference of opinion in a way that ensures that there's still inclusion, there's still inclusivity, and we're all still on the same page and we're all still willing to collaborate with each other? So that is one. And those are some of the things that I think that's a good starter pack basically for a person who is new to quality assurance.
Thank you, Temitope. A few things, I like to always drop some nuggets after you respond to the questions. one thing that is very, very critical that Temitope mentioned, I would just like to reiterate, is that as a QA person, you need to understand the technology. You need to understand what's happening behind those visual screens that you see that you are testing with. Because if you understand SQL, for example, you understand the API calls, that would give you a bit more leverage in troubleshooting when there are problems. I've been in situations where I'm currently testing this application, and for some funny reason, it's not working. And I spend a lot of time trying to understand, but then you have to be able to give the developers a bit of more answers, right? You cannot just go to them and say it's not working. Or it's not working. Why is it not working? What have you done? Have you troubleshooted? Have you checked the DB? Have you checked the API calls? Have you things like that? That's why it's also very good to understand the technology behind those screens as well, because that would also give you leverage. Like I mentioned, you would not be regarded as, you would be taken very seriously if you know your stuff properly. So okay. 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 I was just checking if there were questions. What QA strategies do you use today for your day-to-day activities at work? Do you have any specific metrics that you focus on?
Okay, so I think ultimately for me it's simple. The story and the story I tell my team members and my colleagues always is, the goal is simple. We want to do this work. We want to enjoy the work while we're doing it. And when we are done doing it, we want to sleep with our 2 eyes closed.
Very important.
We don't want to finish deploying. And then when you see a call from a certain colleague, you are afraid that, oh my God, what went wrong? And suddenly you are hyperventilating because you're worried. There must be a problem. This person is the one in charge of networks, or is the one monitoring transactions in production. So if they are calling me, there must be a problem. I want to see their call and be able to pick and be like, how are you doing? What's going on? And I'm not afraid. I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. So with that in mind, it means that from the beginning, I don't wait till when it is done to know that it is done. I'm waiting from the beginning to look into things and ask certain questions. And I think I've gotten to a point where, to an extent, my team members also know that there are certain things that Temitope will not allow pass. So you better fix it early, because when she stumbles on it, the other thing is also that I've learned to give my team members freedom. You're going to do your work the way you want to do your work. But there are some things that if I check and I don't find them where they should be, we will have conversations about how that safety is key. And I try to, again, like I said, I do a lot of storytelling, because I believe strongly that when I have sold the vision to you, it's easier for you to run it whether I'm there or not. So I'm critical about how many of can we go to bed with our 2 eyes closed after this thing has been deployed? Are you sure? If you're not sure, do you want to go back and go and check? But on the flip side, so how do I then check those things sometimes? Is the fact that we have some measures in place that helps everybody know that, okay, you're doing well or you're not doing well. For instance, I'm not counting how many bugs you found, because that's not value to me. What I'm counting is how many times did we deploy and then have to roll back? And then when we roll back, what is the learning from it? And are we repeating that same mistake again? On paper and theoretically, there are lots of measures you can do. How many bugs escaped, how many test coverage. But I also learned early, and Fade will remember this, back in the days when we had a metric that said you must have at least 4 tests by every user story, right? People will create 4 stories, but are they really covering the critical areas? Because if I'm filling the form and I create 4 tests, I can create a test that says submit form with invalid data, submit form with valid data. And then I say what the form submitted successfully, and just do some funny test that does not really deliver. But if I'm able to understand the criticality of each feature I'm working on, then it helps me properly triage the kind of test. So I don't count how many tests you write. Instead, I count how many things went to production and we have problems. When we had that problem, how many times did this problem reoccur? Because then that means that we're not learning, and which is then a problem. So instead, it is recurrent issues. I don't want to see recurrent issues. So how many issues are recurring, and then how many issues are making it to production to the point? Again, we know that systems can never be software and bug free, but how critical are the bugs we're finding?
Exactly.
So those are the things I don't want. So critical bugs, how many critical bugs make it to production, and then you start seeing bugs in production. And so to a large extent, I think I've gotten to a place where to a large extent of it seems these days we don't have a lot of bug fixes anymore, which for me is such a relief to be able to say that, which is a rare thing, right? But it was
absolutely
the journey of pulling teeth of blood and sweat to get to this point. But so I am also going to give a caveat that I understand for this question when you are asking metrics to look out for, but because I am not by the book in many ways, I do not just do because that's what everybody is doing. So there are a lot of measures that I'm like, yeah, I see it, I understand why they're asking to do it, but I'm not going to use that because it's a lagging measure. It's a measure that is after the fact, it's medicine after death. I don't want to start fixing bugs after it has gone to product. I want to fix the bug when I can catch it. So how do I make sure that happens? Is the thoroughness of the test cases, of the user stories, thoroughness of the understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. Is the involvement in saying, guys, when there's a problem that you're worried about, come and meet me first. Is assuring and informing my team members and making sure that they automate their tests. Because then you have to track. That for you to have and forgotten about it, you have to automate your test. My team members know that you're trying to go to production and you told me you tested manually. You have to come and defend it to me why it was manually tested. And if you don't have strong reasons, they know I'm hard to convince. I'm that person. When I say I'm hard to convince, in the sense that I have my opinion. Come and convince me that what you have telling me is different and better. If you convince me, you fly. If you don't convince me, they won't fly. On the flip side, there have been times when they are, because they know that they have to convince me, they are struggling and trying to make it work. And then I say, come, why is this thing taking so long? And they're like, oh, because we're facing this challenge and this and that. How long has it been going on? What are the challenges? If I evaluate and I honestly see that truly we're not going to be able to solve this thing within the time frame we have, don't worry, go and do a manual test and let it go. But you know you owe me the automation for this thing. And so you will come back and do it. You will go now because I want this thing to get past. But you're coming back to that, you owe it to me. And the interesting thing is that I will say, I will let it go. And then randomly, 1, 2 weeks later, 3 months later, I'm like, as to how far, where's that my automation that you owe me? The culture I've built is excellence. We do everything and anything that requires us to be excellent. So whatever that looks like, do it. At the same time, these are things I don't want to see. I don't want to see rollbacks. I don't want to see bugs in production. I don't want to see critical bugs in production. I don't want to see security challenges. And so those are things that we are looking for and tracking for. And then your test must be automated. So that helps to measure. So how you want to make sure those don't happen. This is the outcome I want. The how. I give you a measure of flexibility to achieve it. But these are things that I will not trade and we cannot negotiate. Basically, I will not negotiate with you. On that point, I will be like that case of we don't negotiate with terrorists. Anything that doesn't meet those parts, terrorism negotiation is not going to happen. But every other part of things, I would let it slide. Oh, you want to automate using a different language. The only thing I'll ask is that can somebody explain this thing? So those kind of flexibility is there. But in terms of you're going to go to production without automating my tests, no, I won't have this. Yeah, I'll happily decline it with all joy. So that's some of the ways I track, metrics.
I kind of like, thank you, Temitope. I kind of like how you don't stay by the books. So you're very dynamic and you go by whatever projects you're going by. For example, you don't want security leaks, you don't want rollbacks from production, which could definitely cost organizations a lot of revenue. I would imagine rolling back a quick teller, for example, or stopping pay direct from the ability to collect payments in the back branch. So I definitely understand that, which brings me to my next question. With the rise of artificial intelligence in quotes and automation, how do you see the role of quality assurance evolving? Is your team preparing for that, or is that something that what are you guys doing with that at the moment? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So everybody knows that everybody's worried that AI is taking for their jobs. Interestingly, I'm not worried. Right?
Don't be.
What I've learned is that it's a tool.
Definitely.
So it's how do I use that tool to work for me? How do I harness the power of that tool to work for me, right? And so for me, part of my thoughts around this is, which I think I put out some weeks ago on LinkedIn as well, was one, how does AI get tested to ensure that it's giving me the right outputs? And then how do I, as a quality assurance engineer, harness the power of AI to make my life easier? And for me, actually, AI is a very welcome development, and I'll tell you why. I joke that I'm a very lazy person. I joke because I really am not lazy, but I'll give you context to that joke. It's the sense that I don't like anything that's going to stress me or irritate me. If I have to do the same thing repetitively, I get frustrated. And I've learned that because I'm a human, sometimes that frustration will leak out in places that I don't want it to leak out. So I quickly solve for the things that can frustrate me. AI for me is a tool to solve for my frustrations. So I'm always like, okay, so what do I need to do? Do we currently have clear paths of how we're going to adopt it as an organization right now, right here? I don't have the clear roadmap for it, but I've started having conversations with myself, with my research, and with colleagues who come to me and be like, what are we thinking about this? To say, okay, let's go and look for the tools that would improve our lives a bit better. Thankfully, we're already doing distribution today. But how do we use AI, tools to improve what we're doing today? Where does that come in? Of course, there's the spend as well, that the organizational spend that comes with that. But instead saying, okay, as QA engineers where we sit today, what tools are beginning to drive AI and how do we begin to learn them, to leverage them? So like I know of Scandinium, for instance, that seems to be taking a lot of video that's taking off. And there are a few others as well. There's visual testing that was never a thing like 5-10 years ago. Now you're telling me that you can tell that the page that I was testing just now has changed. You're able to capture that. That's AI. And for me, that's good because the things that the human eye won't see, AI will catch it for us and tell us, right? So how I'm adapting to that is to say I'm reading up more to become better informed. Because like I said earlier, I usually would need a lot of clarity to an extent, which comes from me reading and taking in a lot of inputs to then map the strategy and routes to where I'm going. So today it's to say that the areas and ways where we can begin to skill up. I'm encouraging my team members, for instance, to begin to get more technical. Don't stay on the following the path. Because again, when you work in an organization as mine, there are some things that are already cast in skill. You don't need to think too much. Just follow what the previous person on that project had done and just modify it to suit your own current situation. So you don't need to think too much. But I'm then saying because AI is coming, we need to begin to think outside and start looking at what would change here, what's changing here. This test that we're writing and it's taking us 2 days to write. Is there a way to actually test it that is different that will help to get the answer faster? So those are some questions I'm asking myself. And whenever I have cause to have those individual conversation with my team members as well, I'm asking those questions from people. And then in some cases, people will come up to me and say, we're worried and concerned about this AI thing. What are we doing? Or what are you thinking? I'm like, how I work. Feel free to explore and let's come and share what our thoughts are around it so that we can use a robust approach to choose what tools we'll take and what paths we'll use. And one thing that I'm clear about now more than ever, especially with the launch of Devin, is that even though it looks like it was going to be, it sounded like it was far, it's no longer far. It's literally a few months away. So if we're not aware and beginning to take active decisions and choices and making strategies around it, really, we'll be left holding the bag. So yeah, for now, I'm doing a lot of reading to understand how it fits in my own context. And then based on that, it's going to inform the specific choices and decisions we'll take way forward. But for now, I'm in the exploratory and discovery space.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, answering that question, Temitope. I like what you said at the very beginning. AI isn't coming for anybody's job. It's just coming to enhance. And this is what I always say to my mentees. I always inform them, don't be worried about AI. Be worried if you do not use AI. I worked as, for the last 3 years, I've worked as an AI product lead, and I've seen the fantastic things AI can actually do. And to be fair, I'm totally fascinated, completely fascinated by that. AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be an industry on its own, and it's left for everyone to tap into that space. Because if you don't tap into it, you're going to be left behind. There's no two way about it. Okay, so I think we're nearly done. No one is asking any questions. I just wanted to pinpoint something like, there's a lot we need to collaborate in the tech industry, right? How do you ensure effective collaboration between the AI team and the other departments during the product life cycle? Say, for example, your team is the QA, there's the development team, there could possibly be the dev team, what's it called now? I'm thinking of it from the team that I used to lead, and which was DevOps. So I led the DevOps team, I led the development team itself, I led the machine learning team, as well as data scientists. So how do you, in that kind of scenario, how do you ensure that there's collaborative, everybody's collaborating properly within that space?
I mean, that's one very critical thing, because no one person gets to the end all by themselves.
Mhm.
And you cannot afford to work in silos, because if you do, you're setting yourself up for a huge failure, because there will be missing communication, there will be drop-offs that should not have happened. So I say one of the things that I say is that collaboration is my superpower. And so by force or by hook or by crook, my team members must collaborate.
Interesting.
And because I make it clear that there is no way I mean, if they don't write the code, we're not testing nothing. On the flip side, if we're testing and we don't have anybody to deploy it to production, then it's not going to still get out of the repo. It's just going to be on somebody's on one server somewhere sitting there. So with that understanding, and because I have that clarity of thought as to how work works, it means that I am constantly building bridges. I have learned to build bridges. So I joke about it. I think I still said it to my team, because we have our weekly meetings on Tuesday yesterday. And I told them that if there's anything I need in this organization, I'm going to get it. And the reason I can say that is because I know I collaborate very well. And I demonstrate it, so I push it so they see me do it all the time. If I need something from somebody else in another unit, I'm going to use the word shameless, right? I mean, yes, and I have a context for it. Like, I'm too shameless to be too proud to go and ask for help. I would eagerly and happily come and meet you. Hi, Fade. I hear you're the one in charge of this thing, and I need to do this. And you're the one that can help me. Please, what do I need to provide for you to help me? Is that my script every single time? I will just modify it. Yes, every single time. Hi, Fade, how are you doing today? I need your help. And I hear you're the one that can solve my problem. This is the problem I'm having. This is what I need to achieve. And tell me what I need to give you to help me achieve that thing. And so with that mindset, it makes it easy for me to get anything from anybody. And I mean anybody, because I'm not coming at you as it's your job, go and do it. I could easily say, oh, there's a request from whoever the request came from, and that I learned your team that's in charge of this, solve it for us, and let me know when it's done. No, I'm not too proud. And it doesn't matter who I'm interacting with, whether it's a peer, whether it's a report, somebody is reporting to me, or even somebody who, you would say, okay, somebody in a junior role in the organization. I don't care what role you occupy. If I need something from you, I'm coming to you with the mode of let's get this thing done together. So I've also sold that to my team members, and I say it a lot that at every point, if you don't collaborate with your colleagues, you will not get results. We all know this thing where Cherry, you can shout, be shouting, I'll be looking at you. When I'm ready, I'll respond because you've triggered them, right? I don't want anybody treating me that way. So I'll happily, and the funny thing is, they've seen it play out. I've experimented it several times in their presence. Oh, I'm reaching out to the person and they're not responding to me. I'm like, okay, don't worry, let me talk to them. I'll get back to you. And I'll boss the person, and the person responds to me immediately. I'm like, can you see? And I'm sure if I bring you a script of how you ask them and how I ask them, it's different. So do you want to try my method where I go to them asking for their help, not ordering them to do the work? It's different. And so that collaboration cannot be overemphasized. And it's knowing that I have no airs. So you can't go around with airs and feeling like because I'm now the leader of, I'm now the head of, I'm now an engineering manager, so everybody must call me or worship my food. When I enter the room, they must all start shaking. No, that's not how you get people. That's not influence. That is more of it's control. It's not influence. What you need is influence. So I tell people, and at any level that you are, you can build influence. It's a key ingredient that when you have influence, the leaders will listen to you, your peers will listen to you, who will look up to you too. Even your peers will look up to you because they're like, how do you get things done? Right? Absolutely. So, and how do I collaborate? It's on, I'm inclusive. How I speak is never, it's always what do we need to do? It's never what will you do, but what are you going to do? It's always what do we need to do. I'm not going to write a line of code, but I'll ask you, how are we going to do this? It's a language that I've come to adopt. So it's always, what are we going to do? How do we do this? Where do I come in to help you? I'm happy to support. Even if it's to be on the call and not be, even if it's to be on the call with you to troubleshoot, even though I know that it does not involve me, I'm happy to do that because it's we at the end of the day. And the delivery is not done until it's done. So I cannot say my part is done, I'm waiting for the next thing. No. How do I help you so that we can get to the end and then we can be done? So with that mindset, and that's what I encourage anybody who is on any team in any function, really honestly, I mean, aim for collaboration. Don't try to be a rock star. Your rock star or your star status will still shine through. I've had instances where a project that is not in my team, I'm pulled in to come and work on it because they know I would get it done. Even though it's not in my portfolio of any product. I mean, Fade would know that my portfolio for the longest time did not involve pay direct in any shape or form. But there was a project at some down the year where where they put me in. And it was the CIO at the time, Bafemi, who said Temitope should be the one. And I was like, I've never done this project. Why are you bringing me into this? But one thing was clear, they knew that somehow, some way she would get it done. And you'll not hear fights. Because I was going to work with a different team entirely than those that were. You could say, oh, these ones are used to you. Now you will settle your fight. But these ones don't know me in that way. But I've learned that when you're willing to collaborate and you come at it with a humble approach of, I'm not the specialist here. We're all learning. I'm happy to learn anything and everything from you. You get people to do anything for you. So that's it.
Thank you, Temitope. Just to reiterate, I really like this particular question because you went back to your people management skills again, saying how important this is to have in every stage of whatever career that you are in, and also you are their boss as well, but you're not coming in and saying, oh, how did you solve this? And I remember quite a lot as well when, we were backing into InterSwitch together and we, a lot of times we might have issues with work. Nobody's pinpointing and saying, oh, Fade, you did this. Why did you do it that way? It's always a collaborative effort. And I think that's one of the things I picked up from InterSwitch is also to have a collaborative mindset. It's not just you working on it. Even if it's just me testing it, my manager at the time would come and say, oh, Fade, when are we going to be done with this? She's not asking me, when are you going to be done with this? Why haven't you tested this? Even if there's a bug in production as well, she's not asking, oh, why did this bug get into production? Or how did we get this bug into production? It's always humility. And I feel like people management skills is underrated. People don't take it very seriously, but it helps grow a long way in whatever career that, anybody decides to pick. So very last question. For the audience who are trying to consider career in QA, what advice would you give them? Where do you think they should start from?
So thankfully, today learning and starting a career in QA is, I think, easier than it used to be. And yeah, you would agree that it's easier than it's because in fact testing used to seem like the younger brother, the less spoken about stepchild in software development, Everybody wanted to write code and be a developer. Nobody really wanted to take the testing role.
Yeah.
But when you understand the influence that a QA person actually has, you realize that actually one of the it can be a fulfilling career really. And if I try to go back to my origins in QA, which you actually kind of encouraged me. Remember when I was crossing from them and I was like, no, I don't want to do this. This was never part of my path. And this is fine. Let me try my hands at it and see how it goes. And look at us down the line now. I guess exactly. I agree with it, right? And so what I've learned is when it comes to testing, right, you need to, where you can start is, I think some of the things I've mentioned earlier, which is one, curiosity, and then look for the basic technical skills around understanding basics of software development. You don't, and I like to always reemphasize that you don't need to understand how to write code, but you need to understand how code behaves. So understand some technology stack, have an understanding of how testing works. There is the software testing lifecycle, for instance. Understand what goes into it, how you plan for it. Understand requirement elicitation. That is basically, and the impression is that we do these things in day-to-day life, but we don't understand it. So for instance, today, if you have lived for any length of time, at some point in your life, you ask somebody what do they want to fix. That's requirement elicitation at the basic level.
Exactly.
You've asked your friend or your parents or your sibling, what do you want to fix? That is basic requirement elicitation because you're asking them what do they want, what is the result they want. And so you need to understand how to communicate well. So, interviewing skills, you need to have it. Interviewing is not that somebody sits opposite you and you're asking them questions they don't get asking. It's you being able to ask the right kind of question that will give you the right response. Because you need to understand that what people say is not everything they are trying to say. It's why I'm sure we've all seen that meme where they said customer requirements and it was a swing. And by the time they built it, the swing looked nothing like the initial picture we saw because it was cut here, it was missing here. That is requirement elicitation failure. So being able to ask the right questions and getting good understanding of what things are, and then being able to triage whatever you got from the requirement elicitation to the point where it paints the exact picture that the customer wants is a critical and fundamental skill, because you're the voice of the customer. So you cannot just be you need to think, you need to use your solution you're building from the perspective of somebody who has no idea whatsoever. So you need to understand the solution, but then when you're using it, use it like a novice. You need to think about that if my customer has to think to use this solution, then there's a failure point here, because I need to make it as intuitive as possible, almost like a no-brainer for them. Then there's a part for curiosity and community, where you're able to bring people in, ask the right question, and be able to build a community of people or belong to a community of people who are actually on the same journey as you, because it will help you make sense of a lot of things that you don't have to struggle through. For instance, there are things that I've done that I would not know to tell you, but if you ask me that, oh, I'm going through this challenge, what do you think? I'm like, oh yeah, I did that somewhere before. Here's the solution, or what's the path, or here's the path to it. So that is key. So join communities of software testers. There are many of them all over the world. There's Test Bash, Ministry of Testing, ANST, that's the Nigerian chapter of testers. There are a whole lot. I could go on. Just join communities. Go on LinkedIn, find all the communities I'm joining, and pay attention to some of those forums. You will learn a lot from there. The other thing is you need to get your hands dirty. So find one automation tool and learn it. You're learning it not because that's going to be your only tool, but it gives you a leg into that space. So you could pick a basic one as basic as Postman, which is for APIs, because Postman is easy. It has a lot of help to get started. It's not the final destination, but it's a good place to start, right? It helps to get started because it gives you some snippets and code snippets that you can use to then begin to build up what you want to do. So learn an automation skill, understand the software testing life cycle, develop your communication skills, hone it very well, get curious, improve your questioning skills. Questioning and interviewing falls under that curiosity. And then be able to listen. Your listening skills is also very critical. Listening, because when you're talking to a customer who is telling you what they want, what they are saying a good number of the time is not everything that they are expecting. So if you're not asking the right questions and listening to the undertone, you would miss the nuances that gives you the real answer and gives you that thing that gives them the jackpot, right? So when you understand that, it helps you, and that's, I think, is a fair place to start. And of course, the SQL skills that I mentioned before, and then understanding how to debug. And how do you debug? Go and start learning how to read logs. You will look, it's very reading logs is boring, but once you make sense of it, it's like an expo, because it tells you everything that you need to know about anything. And suddenly you'll be like, how do you get so smart? Yeah, because I know how to read logs. And when you can read logs, you are able to then engage intelligently with your
conversations,
because you're able to tell them exactly where the problem is. I remember back in the days when I tell you that something is wrong, I'm not telling you something because I saw it wrong. I'm telling you because I've seen where the problem is. Half the time I'll tell you this is where the problem is and this is the solution said. So when I come and I give it with proofs and evidence, I don't need to shalaye. As we say now, I will give you screenshots. I'll capture the area where the error failed. I'll tell you the stored procedure that spoils this because you are passing this particular wrong value there. So you cannot come and tell me that I did not know what I was saying when I finished telling you, because I've gone under the hood to find where the problem is. So that curiosity was what made me go there. They told me, oh, you don't need to understand. I know I need to understand, because I just need to understand. You cannot tell me I don't need to understand. So that curiosity, and then you need to be willing to, you need to be able to manage rejection. And I think what rejection is. Somebody will come and talk down at you. They will insult you. But sometimes without even meaning to. But you need to be able to dust it off and just act like you didn't hear anything. And focus on the course. Like, I know where I'm good. I know what I'm trying to achieve. So when you need help, be happy to go and be willing to go and meet somebody who knows it. And be willing to also have them tell you no. Because they will tell you no. Whether because they want to, because they don't like you, or even because they just don't have the time. So be willing to accept rejection and those kind of things, so that you don't get this distracted, disappointed, and dissuaded because I'm tired of begging people to help me. I mean, is it because I'm begging? Beg. Guess what? You don't know how many beggars beg in my career. But right now I'm here, right?
Exactly.
And nobody knows if or when or how I beg. I beg. But it's not a story that is going to be on my forehead forever. Temitope has begged 1,000 times. today is now 1001 or 1015. No. So it's the humble pie. Accept that this is a period I don't know. So I need to learn everything. Any dirty job that anybody wants to do on the team, reluctantly accept it. It gives you insight to those things that nobody else would have taken, you know. And that doesn't mean you become a doormat. Let's be clear. I have always been an assertive person. So even though I'm a quiet and reserved person, my team members know that I'm not a doormat. So there's a difference. The fact that I'm learning from you and I'm eating the humble pie does not mean that I do not remain assertive in where I need to be assertive. To firmly say that no, I can tell that this thing is actually wrong and we need to fix it, but this thing is not going right, and I think this is what we should do. So being assertive too, because otherwise you end up being everybody's errand person in a way that does not further your career. And sometimes the errands will not even be related whatsoever to the skills you're trying to acquire. Because tell me how being the one to plan the meeting and get the snacks for the meeting is helping you learn how to test. It doesn't. With all due respect, right? It's not a promoted task. So you're not going to say because I'm learning, I'm the one that will go and go to work all the way to TFC to go and buy the snack and come back and set up the meeting. No, that's not what I'm here to do. What I'm begging you to teach me is explain to me how to get the logs. So being able to separate that. So, which is why I have to clarify that. Be humble, or don't be a doormat. There's a difference, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's the place to start.
Thank you so much, Temitope. A few things I just want to reiterate was, I think you've covered majority of the topics anyway, but one thing stood out to me was having the ability to elicit requirements, as well as being a QA as well. Obviously, people that know that I crossed from QA into business analysis, and that made my transition very, very easy because I was already doing majority of the elicitation of the requirements already in InterSwitch, working or speaking to the client, understanding what they wanted, also documenting the requirements and things like that. So in a way, majority of these tech roles, they are intertwined into each other. And for example, if you're a QA, you can be a BA. If you're a BA, you can be a QA. And you can also move into other roles as well in the tech space. Yeah. Okay. So Temitope, thank you so much for making this session so vibrant and informative. We're looking forward to see you guys in the next session. But before I close this tonight, I just wanted to share a few words about Techlerator and what we do. So Techlerator is a dedicated platform. Basically, we help tech enthusiasts turn them into world-class experts. We offer hands-on trainings that prepare them to excel, from business analysis to cybersecurity, product design management, product management, projects management, software testing as well. Techlerator, we've created the tech journey mapped out, to help tech enthusiasts move into those careers that I mentioned already. So whether you're taking this step into the tech or looking to advance your career, Techlerator is able to guide you and help you propel your career moving forward. I'd like to thank everyone, and thank you very much for joining the AMA session. And thank you very much to our guest, Temitope, as well. So have a lovely evening, everyone. And thank you once again for joining the AMA session. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, bye.